Hello there, Stevos. Welcome to this week's episode of Steve's Movie Wrap-Up here on my YouTube channel, SteveOfficial. If you like what you see, please give this video a thumbs up. Leave a comment in the comment section down below. Please keep it positive, as always. And if you are new around here, feel free to hit that subscribe button for more content. So, without further ado, let's get into this week's episode of Steve's Movie Wrap-Up. And first of all, we are starting off with the movie Dark Harvest. I saw this trailer a long time ago, and I know from the trailer that this movie was going to be bad. Now, normally, when I watch a bad movie, it tends to get a half a star or 1-star rating, depending on the movie itself and how bad it is. But this gets a 2.5-star rating, and here is why. Firstly, let's start with the performances. They weren't great, and even from the trailer itself, I could tell that the performances that the actors would give was going to be terrible. There was so many parts of the movie where I felt the characters were just overreacting to the most ridiculous stuff. The camera work is the next negative thing to talk about. It's very shuddery camera work, and it just really doesn't work for me at all. If anything, it just feels rather annoying at times, and it makes me wonder whoever edited this movie thought it would be a great idea to keep doing this kind of thing throughout the movie. However, though, there are some rather positive parts, surprisingly, about this movie that I can take away from this. Firstly, it's set at Halloween, which, given the time of year that I'm watching this, it's great because it gets you in the Halloween spirit. Secondly, there are some rather gorgeous and stunning cinematography shots in this, despite the fact the movie itself is terrible and the camera work isn't great, but there are weirdly some lovely cinematic shots which I think, had this been released on the big screen rather than streaming, you could have appreciated the movie for this and probably this alone. There was a movie I watched a few weeks ago on Disney Plus called No One Will Save You, which featured aliens, and I said in that movie that the design of the aliens in that movie were pretty decent. Well, I can safely say that the creatures that we see here in Dark Harvest have got a great design in this movie as well, surprisingly. Yes, it's of course CGI, but it's actually a really good creature design, which I loved seeing throughout. There is one final thing that I can positively say is great about this movie: the gore. Now, given the fact that I said that this movie was terrible, and no doubt it still is, but the film itself doesn't shy away from the gore, and actually some of the death scenes I saw throughout this movie, some of them were actually really creative. I saw some of the character being literally torn in half by the creatures in the film, which I thought was great. And I'm gonna say this, but there is a particular shot in this movie which I can safely say I was mesmerized by watching, which involved a lot of blood and some slow motion, which I really loved a lot. And again, it's probably up there with one of the probably beautiful cinematic shots that you could probably take away from this film. So yes, this might not be the best movie to watch during the spooky season, but that's not to say you won't have a good time watching this, because it's still a somewhat fun and watchable movie. If you're looking to watch Dark Harvest, it's available to watch now on Amazon Prime in the UK. The next movie I watched was another movie on Amazon Prime Video, which has been released recently, called The Other Zoe. Now, I gave this film a 1-star rating. I found out about this movie's existence only a few months ago prior to its release. This movie was recently released on Amazon Prime Video. Now, a lot of people who I've seen review this movie on Letterboxd have given this 4 stars or 5 stars just for the actor Drew Starkey. But for me, this gets a 1-star rating. Now, I was actually rather looking forward to seeing this movie because the premise behind this movie intrigued me to give it a watch when a school footballer ends up getting amnesia following an accident. He mistakes a character called Zoe as his girlfriend, despite the fact that he has a girlfriend called Zoe, who is not the Zoe that he's mistaken as his girlfriend. This plot sounds rather complex and complicated, but if you watch the movie, you'll get the idea. Now, this premise did interest me because I thought this could be a good concept for a film. And don't get me wrong, it was, yes, but both characters, who are coincidentally called Zoe, are just rather insufferable, and I just can't stand them. I didn't really find this movie to be funny or really interesting neither. I don't know, if you want to check it out, then it's out there. It's a movie that exists, but I would probably go in with some low expectations. Some people enjoy the movie while others are like me and have the same opinion of it, which is it is pretty much mediocre. I finally got round to watching The Exorcist Believer, and I'll be honest, part of this for me, in my opinion, was great, and then another part of this wasn't great for me, in my opinion. I have heard so many bad reviews from critics and audiences alike, which is the reason why I've put it off for so long, but given that I have seen this, it's definitely not as bad as the critics were originally making out. I can say this movie is watchable. The first part that introduced us was the fact that we hit a little bit of a backstory at the beginning of the movie of Angela's parents. Her mother died before she was born, and her father had to bring her up from birth. And I love the fact that they had this really nice and close relationship with one another at the beginning of the film. I thought that was great. Then we have Angela and her friend Catherine go off to the woods together, which then they go missing in the woods, and again, the movie made me feel intrigued to see these girls being found, especially as they got lost in the woods. Yes, they did get found in the end, but when they got to the hospital, they thought they were gone for a few hours, but turns out they had actually been missing for 3 days. From this point, when we see the girls becoming more demonic and stuff, this is when the movie for me fell flat. I didn't really find any of it scary, and I will be honest here as well. The movie could have done with more scare factors, which would have been great too. Also, Regan's mother turns up in the film, and while something does happen to her, which when I saw it on screen, I was surprised by what happened to her character. I felt as though she was wasted as a character in the film, and wish she had more of a role in this film. However, towards the end, though, there is a really heartfelt moment that does happen, which I won't spoil that part. All in all, it's a watchable movie. It's not a terrible movie, but I would say if you're planning to watch this still during the spooky season, then lower your expectations for this one. Now, I did give The Exorcist Believer 2.5 stars over on my Letterboxd account. The next film I watched was The Burial, which I gave 3.5 stars over on Letterboxd. So this was actually a really decent movie. I'm not going to lie, I'm not usually one for courtroom dramas or dramas in general, but when I found out this movie had Tommy Lee Jones in it, I just had to check this one out over on Amazon Prime Video. Surprisingly, I really enjoyed this because it's got a great cast. Not only does Tommy Lee Jones star in this movie, and while he's absolutely great in the role that he plays in the movie, but you've also got Jamie Foxx is also a standout in this movie as well. I'm very surprised to see that this movie didn't get a cinema release, because even if this came out in cinemas, I would have likely to have seen this in cinemas. It did at times feel like a movie out of the 90s, given the fact that this was set in the 90s. Even the soundtrack in the film sounds like a film out of the 90s as well. If there is one film you should check out sometime soon, make sure it is this one, because this is actually a pretty decent streaming movie. It does have some light humour throughout, and given the fact that this movie is just a little shy of over 2 hours long, but I did think this movie was also really well paced as well. The next film I watched, which I did watch earlier this week with my friend Damon, was The Iron Giant, which I gave 3 stars over on Letterboxd. A great childhood classic, one which I probably have seen at least once or twice before in my lifetime prior to watching this, but really love the animations in this one, especially given the time of its release being in the year 1999. It is a kind of mixture between 2D animation and 3D animation. Great movie, one that does have a bit of a dark story behind it from an adult's point of view, and somewhat of a sad story too, but that doesn't mean that kids won't enjoy this, because it is still a family-friendly movie. I watched It Lives Inside, which I gave 3 stars over on Letterboxd. While It Lives Inside isn't the best horror movie that 2023 has to offer, it's still a somewhat decent horror movie to watch. I thought that the design of the creature, with the long fingers, probably the longest fingers I have seen on any creature ever in a horror movie, was pretty solid, to be honest. I also loved the use of orange/red lighting, especially towards the final act of the movie as well. At times, though, this did feel like I was watching The Boogeyman that came out in cinemas earlier this year, but the only difference in this is that it had more of a cultural story behind it compared to The Boogeyman. Either way, though, as I said in the opening to this review, this isn't the best horror movie that 2023 has to offer, but still a watchable movie, and the cast played their roles really well as well. I finally got round to watching this week as well, Expendables 4, which got a 0.5 star rating on Letterboxd. Did anyone truly want a 4th Expendables movie? I certainly didn't. After watching the first 3 movies earlier this year, I was intrigued to give this one a watch in cinemas. Then I heard 2 reviews from friends which were rather mixed, and then I heard 1 positive review which made the movie sound like it was going to be a blast, but for me, sadly, this wasn't for me at all. Stallone and Statham couldn't even save this movie for me. The CGI was just all over the place. And then the beginning of the movie just felt like there was explosions going off just for the fun of it. But then you realise they weren't actual explosions, they were just CGI'd explosions. Then you have the helicopter, which to me looks CGI'd too. Honestly, for me, this franchise has just been rather hit and miss. The only good Expendables movie I enjoyed was actually the second one. The rest are rather trash in my opinion. And I really hope and pray that they put this franchise to bed at long last now. I can't be dealing with another Expendables movie. The next film I watched was Birth/Rebirth, which I gave 2.5 stars over on Letterboxd. So this film had a bit of a Frankenstein vibe to it, which I did partially love, but at times though, it didn't feel too horror for my liking though. Had this film have gone a little bit more into the horror aspect, I reckon this would have had a higher rating from me. But what I will say though is this is amazingly shot, and at times, with the dark atmospheric moments, they are good. I would also say that the performances from the cast members were played really well on screen as well. There is one scene in particular which I did find kind of awkward and, well, a bit odd. One female character who happens to be a nurse in the movie went to a bar, took this guy to the bathroom to basically jack him off, and used this machine to collect his sperm. which she then later used on herself to impregnate herself. And when she got the machine out to collect the random dude's sperm whilst jacking him off, he asked her what it was, and she said it was a toy. Anyway, the scene in question, which I know I probably went into a lot of detail here, but I would probably say that was so odd to watch on screen. Anyway, 2.5-star rating on Letterboxd is what that film got from me. The next film I watched was Malum, which I gave 1.5-star rating over on Letterboxd. I thought I recognised this story and even the police corridors from somewhere. It's basically a reboot or a remake of a movie that was made about 9 years ago called Last Shift. And it's basically the same movie as that, except probably more modernised. Now, while this movie has a slow burn to it, especially given the fact that this movie is about an hour and a half long, but it does slowly build up to the horror that fans of horror have came here for. Now, while the horror in this film isn't great, the movie itself does allow itself to become rather messy at times with the script, which isn't great neither. Just some of the dialogue is quite questionable at times and does feel rather clunky as well. This doesn't mean to say that despite my rating that this movie that's worth avoiding, because for all those wanting to check out a new horror movie, then I would say give this one a go, but just go into this with a bit more lower expectations. And my final movie that I have watched this week was The People Under the Stairs, which I gave a 3-star rating over on Letterboxd. I have been wanting to check this movie out for a really long time, and now I'm so glad that I have. It's such a bonkers movie, but at the same time, a movie that you can't help but love neither, about a young boy named Poindexter, also nicknamed as Fool, who decides that his parents' awful landlords are keeping something under the stairs, as the title of the movie suggests. Anyways, this movie is directed by Wes Craven, so if you haven't seen this one before, then I definitely do recommend it, especially as this is one of those early 1990s movie as well, which is deemed as a classic. So I absolutely enjoyed this movie. Obviously, for those that know Wes Craven, he's great at horror, and this is one that I think you will definitely have a blast with watching if you've not yet seen this movie before. And that is it for today's movie wrap up. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Like I said before, if you have enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Leave a comment in the comment section down below. What movies have you been watching this past week? I'd love to hear your thoughts. And of course, as always, feel free to subscribe for more great content on the way. I am going to be back again next Friday the 3rd of November at 4 PM UK time with my next movie wrap up, and I'm just going to very quickly go through a couple of those movies that I can say I will be watching in the next week, which does include the review for Five Nights at Freddy's, which came out today. I'm also going to be doing reviews for Trolls Band Together, which is the 3rd Trolls movie in the franchise, and I'm also going to be watching Cat Person as well, a brand new psychological thriller / drama movie. I'm going to be watching that in the next week, and I'll give you my thoughts on that in next week's video. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I will be back with another YouTube video again on Monday, which will be my weekly vlog. But until then though, it's goodbye. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys again in my next YouTube video.